If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This episode is sponsored by Well Balanced Nutrition and 360 Health. Happy New Year, Eleanor.
Oh, Happy New Year to you, too.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to all you out there. While we are on a break, we didn't want to leave you hanging and thought it would be a great time of the year to share with you some of our favorite episodes from when we first started in 2021. We have a brand new Instagram account we are excited to share with you.
Oh my gosh, we're coming into the new age.
Woohoo! So you know that you can reach us on Facebook, but now we are on Instagram at Health Geeks Podcast. So check us out and follow us.
Oh, please do.
So you might be thinking about New Year's resolutions or setting some goals, and we highly recommend the book Think Like a Monk to help you really think about your priorities and what matters and how you spend your time. So let's give this a second listen.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hey, Eleanor, how are you today?
I am so good. I can't wait to see what we're going to talk about.
Well, I am excited to talk about Jay Shetty's book, Think Like a Monk. Yes, so I found Jay Shetty online through my favorite mentor, Brendan Bouchard. And I also came across Jay Shetty's videos. He's very popular on YouTube. So when he came out with this book, I was really excited to introduce you to it and read it. So I want to talk a little bit about why would you want to read Think Like a Monk? So first of all, it was 21 when he became a monk. So he spent 3 years and then decided he was a storyteller at heart, and he wanted to leave the monastery and share his experience as a monk with us normal people. So the book is really about helping us find a fulfilling life by clearing the roadblocks to overcoming the negative thoughts that we usually have, assessing stillness, and creating true purpose in our lives. This book is divided into 3 different parts: let go, grow, and give. So in each section, he really emphasizes slowing down and getting still in order to be intentional about your life. And he shares a meditation for you to try.
You know, we talked about me being a little bit older than you. And I remember traveling through LaGuardia and Newark airports back in the 70s. And there were these guys in these robes, and they were Hare Krishna monks, you know. And they were really different from the disco stuff that was going on in the major culture. And I thought, I don't know what to make of that. And here we know, 50 years later, we've got a fellow who has experienced, I don't know what, we're going to learn more about his experience, but he chose not to do what so many of the rest of us did, which was go to college, get a degree, go to work, and then, you know, just stay in the chute and retire and live on whatever you got. So he chose not to do that. I think it's going to be an interesting story.
Yeah, and like you said, when you came across the monks, that that's interesting. I think he is so cool that he makes being a monk cool. Like, it's just neat that he brings that to the scene. Right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought we're reading about being a monk?
Yeah, and we talked about different kinds of monks that are out there too, because my association with the word monk was a Catholic monastery. So when I pick up this book, I find out, no, we're not talking about that kind of monk.
Yeah, so I would think a monk is kind of boring. Who would want to be like a monk? But when you get to know Jay Shetty and follow him online, he's funny, he's charismatic, and he's just real and down to earth, and you see that through his book. And so let me tell you a little bit about who Jay Shetty is and anybody that's listening. So he's this best-selling author. He has a podcast. He's the former monk, and now he practices as a purpose coach. And his mission is to take the wisdom he's learned from training as a monk and make it entertaining so people can relate. Now, after reading this book, would you recommend it before we get started?
I absolutely would. I like this book for lots of good reasons. Yeah. And it's an easy read. It's a enlightening read. And I think if you haven't read it, I don't know, some of these people may have already read this book. If you haven't, pick it up, see what you think.
I've listened to it on Audible, and after that, so I loved his voice. He's the one that's narrating it. But I loved everything he was saying so much that I needed to get my hands on the actual book. So now I've listened to it and I've read it. And I think this is one that you could read over and over again and find little gems of motivation and inspiration from him. So I definitely would recommend it because he's a great storyteller, and you can pick it up and you can read just one section and still get something from it. You don't have to read it from front to back, I don't think. Before we get started, we want to let you guys know that we want to hear from you. If you've read this book, tell us about it. What did you think? And you can do that by emailing us, Kristen at Well Balanced Nutrition, or
E.L. Russell at 360health4u.com.
And then also you can find us, our Facebook page, The Health Geeks, and let us know what you think there. Ready to go from frustrated and overwhelmed with diets to clear, confident, and loving what you eat? At Well Balanced Nutrition, through personalized coaching, we help you create a healthy relationship with food, understand your unique needs, and implement sustainable changes so that you can have the confidence and energy to live a life you love. It starts with a complimentary call. Visit us at wellbalancednutrition.com.
At 360 Health, I partner with Shackley Corporation, and we make healthy happen. We do that with a variety of products, and we do it with discussion with our folks because we know that a healthy lifestyle is where you're going to get the best health. It starts with a meology assessment where you answer several questions, maybe 5 minutes, and you'll get a recommendation for your own personal nutrition supplementation plan with explanations that you can use every day. So we want to help you make healthy happen. Starts with a phone call, or check out our website, 360health4u.com, and we'll be in conversation before you know it.
All right, so in part one, Jay Shetty tells us how to let go of outside influences, negativity, fear, and selfish intentions. He really caught me from the beginning with this quote, "I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am." Is that not mind-blowing that, all of these outside influences actually are so powerful to what we think our identity is? And he goes on to talk about the only way to build a meaningful life is to filter out the noise and look within. And this is really how he introduces us to the importance of reflection and stillness and, in his opinion, meditation. So he talks about those outside forces that shape us and distract us from being who we want to be as where we spend our time and our money. And this hit home for me, this little perspective shift. In the book, he says, a 60-minute TV show flew by. A 60-minute lunch with family, will it ever end? Everyday coffee habit, need that, $4 a day. Fresh, healthy food choices, $1.50 extra a day. Not worth it. 15 minutes of scrolling social media, me time. 15 minutes of meditation, no time. How true is that? I mean, reading it out loud, it's like, duh. But really, a boring lunch with family, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh. Is this over yet? Is it bedtime? Because my kids are driving me crazy. Or, 15 minutes can go by so quickly on Facebook, but yet I really struggle with 15 minutes of meditation. So he really has you say, where are you spending your time? He calls it a time audit and has you look at that because where you spend your time can become your values. And even if you think you value something, if you're not really spending your time that's not really how you're living your values.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how your mindset influences your behaviors. And I think that's what he's helping us, calling our attention to, because it can get out of control, like a horse out of the barn before you know it. And years have gone by, and you thought you were doing your life one way, and then you find, why does it look like this?
Exactly. Yeah. And so he calls us to reflect regularly so that doesn't happen to us.
Or reduces the risk, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So he shares 3 ways to reflect regularly. 1, in the evening, reflect on what went well that day. 2, once a month, go somewhere new. 3, engage in a meaningful hobby. Do you find it hard to fit in reflection into your daily life?
Not so much now, but when I was in the chaos, I can't talk either, of the middle years where you have aging parents, you've got little kids, you got a full-time career, you maybe have a partner, a husband or whatever, and your time, it's hard to make the decisions on how do you just not get caught on this, like the little animal on the wheel. What are those things called? The running wheel?
Hamster wheel?
Yeah, hamster wheel, which just never ends. And you just feel like, is this all there is? So if you haven't been introduced to these ideas, that can happen very easily. And then you have the health consequences of living that way. Broken relationships, maybe addictions, just sadness, depression, all sorts of things can creep in. And so I think what Shetty is helping us with is here's a tool. Try meditation. Try this reflection. See what happens in your life.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be meditation at first. I mean, he does push meditation a lot in this book, but he's saying just in the evening, reflect on what went well that day. And I found a really cool tool by Inkwell Press. They've got a daily download. It's a little tear-off sheet, and it has these little prompts, and you can say, what did I accomplish today? You get to rate, like, did I fill my plate too full? Or how did I feel at the end of the day? It has 3 spots to write down what you're grateful for, and then a little spot at the end to kind of plan out, okay, what is going to happen tomorrow? And it's really helped me relax at the end of the day, reflect on what went well, and then be able to clear my mind to fall asleep. And you were telling me the other day about like a
planner?
A planner that kind of does that for you.
It used to be these little calendars that you would get, Monday through Friday, and there were just blocks of empty space, and you filled them in. Now there's a whole bunch of stuff out there available to us where people have thought about these ideas, and they've structured little prompts like you were talking about. And so the one I use is a passion planner, and I've used it for about 3 years, and I love it because it has that reflection built in daily or weekly or monthly and annually. And it causes you to, you flip the page and you go, oh, I think I will sit down with a cup of coffee and answer these questions. And it's not so easy because we don't think this stuff all the time. We're thinking about, what do I need to get at the grocery store? Have I done the laundry? What do I do about the car? Does it need a new battery? Blah, blah, blah. And you just aren't there to say, is that what I'm doing with my life? No, I want to become a certain kind of person. And that's what these prompts help us get a little more connected to. And so, yeah, these calendar tools can be really nice.
Yeah, exactly. And he says once a month, go somewhere new. And this year, I'm going to...
And COVID, are you kidding?
Yeah, I know, right?
I have a friend that's in the travel business, and he's not doing so well.
Well, this year I'm going to incorporate a once-a-month reflection and planning session where I'm going to try to go with my mask on, maybe to a different coffee shop or something new to take that time because, I'm kind of in the middle where I've got the family and the outside obligations. But if I set this time apart to really reflect and plan out an intentional month with my planner, I'm hoping that it'll be really good for me.
So, I want to really applaud you for taking time for self-care.
Right.
And, that's another thing that we're hearing a lot about these days, too. So I think Shetty's book is helping people see the wisdom of taking some time for yourself.
Right. And to just be still. And it's okay to not be doing something all the time. Well, chapter 2 goes into negativity, which is super relevant right now because negativity is everywhere. And he cites research studies that show how contagious negativity is.
Oh, do you have a Facebook account?
Uh-huh.
Do you have a Facebook feed then? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always stunned by the number of things that come into my feed that say, what's your biggest gripe today? Just asking people to focus on negativity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's like fun to talk about, and I'm going, no, let's don't do that. So, tell me more about what Shetty says.
Well, there's two really interesting studies. In the first, he mentioned a study with Stanford students who wrote about being a victim or a group that wrote about a time they were bored. And 26% of the ones who wrote about being a victim were less likely to be helpful so it makes us kind of selfish. And then in the second study, he mentions they looked at a term called groupthink. Now, this is really scary. So college students were put in groups, and there was somebody there who knew the right answer but willingly said the wrong answer. And so this research showed that even though the correct answer was obvious, 75% of the subjects followed the crowd to give an incorrect response at least once.
So we do have influence, don't we?
Yeah, because
Our
the
words.
person before them said the wrong answer, and so they didn't want to be out of place or whatever. So how scary is that we're wired to conform and that negativity can spread like a virus? We're certainly seeing that today play out.
Yeah, I was telling you in one of our conversations about evolutionarily, there's the idea that we are a communal group of people. Humans are social, and we need to be together to be well. And if we're isolated from our group, way back in the Paleolithic times, we probably got picked off. We didn't survive. And so if the group is doing something and you look at that and you say, I better do what the group's doing so that I'll survive. Even though you may know they're leading off the cliff, they're walking off a cliff. You're going to do it too because you don't want to be left there for the tiger to get you. So, these are hardwired things. And it's negativity, in my experience, is one of the weirdest things to witness because it's so powerful. Somebody can be happy and smiling, and it's not as infectious.
Right.
So, yeah, this is something to pay attention to.
Well, and Jay Shetty shares his example. He was in the monastery, or, as a monk, everybody was told to be really positive and to think good thoughts about other people, and they really worked on getting rid of their negativity. And then he goes out into the real world, and everybody wants to gossip to him. And he had to really figure out, okay, how do I navigate in this world of negativity? So he has some tips. He says to first neutralize the charge and let go of negative people you don't need in your life. And for me, on the Facebook, I have curated it to be as positive as possible. So if somebody is really negative on there, I say unfollow, or that I don't want to see their post as much. And then for the people you can't get rid of, try to adjust the amount of time you spend with them. He's got the 75-25 rule. So 75% of your time be around people that bring you up and not down.
Don't some people say you're the product of the 5 people around you?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So the other thing he says is to reverse it. Reverse negativity into a positive. He's got this saying, stop, spot, and swap. And, he just goes into stop judging other people and comparing ourselves to other people. I love this quote. The more we define ourselves in relation to the people around us, the more lost we become. I'm really trying to work on this with my kids because I think it's human nature to just compare, and we have to work against that nature. So he's like, my 5-year-old says, well, I'm so much better than so-and-so at this. And I have to keep redirecting him and saying, well, you're better than you were yesterday. Or, have you learned more? And that's kind of fascinating how we have to rewire ourselves to compare only to ourselves. And Jay kind of goes into that here.
Yeah, and in developmental stages, if we can do that earlier, it would seem that we would maybe have a little hope.
Yeah, exactly. He says that, Jay Shetty says that we should watch what we say. Remember, saying whatever we want, whenever we want, however we want is not freedom. Real freedom is not feeling the need to say these things. So That's very monk-like. And then we can't get rid of negative thoughts completely. It's what we do with these thoughts once they arise that makes a difference. He goes on to say, envy can become joy for another person, and that when we find ourselves judging others, it's really shining a light on maybe some darkness we have within ourselves. So we ask you to explore that. I really appreciate that he realizes we can't get rid of negative thoughts altogether, and he doesn't want it to be all sunshine and rainbows all the time, but it's how we manage those thoughts. And then that moves us into fear. He's got a whole nother chapter about fear. And he has us, again, do a little audit and audit what we're attached to. So our fear is really about losing things in life and thinking that they're ours and we own them. And the monk mind, like he says in the book, is really aware that we're just borrowing everything. We're just visitors on planet Earth, staying at an Airbnb, and nothing's really ours. So I really thought about this. What am I afraid of losing? And I've been trying to change my mental relationship with those things. I was afraid of losing my house because we lived in Durham for a little while, and we built our house. I get to pick every little feature out, and then we moved to Winston-Salem.
Ooh, painful.
And it was like living in a dream house and then letting it go. So I had a lot of fear around that when I heard that we were moving. And it's just funny the things that you can be attached to.
Absolutely, yeah. It sometimes surprises you that you're that attached.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
people
just a house.
People in my age group are having a lot of trouble with that because their children have grown up and left, and maybe they have a spouse that's died, and they have a big house or a house that they've lived in for many years, and all the stuff that's in it, and then it's time to let go. And there are all sorts of new businesses starting now to help people understand you don't need all the things you used to need, and it's the same conversation as why do we get attached to things or places or people because they aren't permanent. That idea of renting your space.
Yes.
And that's kind of scary and produces fear for people.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny you say, we're surprised that we're attached to these things. Because he does have you dive in deep to what is really underlying, get to the bottom of your fear is what he said. And I'll be honest, funny story, I was really nervous about doing this podcast.
No.
Yes. And I was talking to a good friend about it, and he's like, well, what are you afraid of? And because of this book, I was like, okay, I'm going to get to the bottom of what I'm afraid of. And I had this flashback of a memory, maybe when I was in 4th grade. I stood up to my friend's dad, who I thought was being mean to my friend. And this dad just completely shut me down, made me feel so small. And in my mind, I was like, I'm never doing that again. I'm never standing up, standing out. I'm just going to be quiet and against the wall so I never have to feel this way again. And Jay Shetty also goes back into time when, he got his fear down to, I don't want to disappoint my parents. Mm-hmm. And you said earlier how he didn't go off to college. He didn't get a career. He went to be a monk.
Yeah, and he talks about his parents had this idea you either, were a professional, you had a job, or you were a failure. And he chose failure in his mind by going to this route of radical, flying in the face of his family's traditions.
Yeah, it must have been so hard.
Yeah, a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure. And it's like, whoa, that's a choice.
Right.
And he's worked through that, obviously.
Yes. And again, he brings it back to meditation because I think he said, it was a good 30 minutes of meditating on his fear and what was behind it. And then
he also talks about when he was in the ashram, if that's how you say it, and his mentor said, it's time for you to go. You don't need to stay here. And he thought he was a failure at being a monk. I mean, how can you fail at that? And he said it was like having a divorce. And I can't even do the monk thing right.
Yeah.
And I have to move back to my parents' house, which he was lucky they would let him come back. But here's an adult living with his parents. And he had debt, like $25,000 worth of debt. How was he going to pay that? He didn't have a job. I mean, his life is a mess. I mean, what's he going to do? But what turns out, by the time he reenters society, all of his peers who have done the right thing have these jobs and they're miserable. Their lives are awful. So they start talking to him, and all of a sudden what Jay has learned on his journey is something they want to share in their corporate structures. So Jay's going out talking to Google, Starbucks, and he's helping people understand how to cope in this modern society. So this fear issue that you're talking about and how it starts with each one of us. And as a parent, this is such a guilt trip for me, is what have I done to my kids? That's, have I said something to them when they were little that's going to destroy their life as adults? And that's some guilt I could carry, but I can't. We all have experiences, and it's how we as individuals confront them. So, so I'm glad you're here with the podcast today and confronted that fear.
Yeah, exactly. And the way he confronted the fear, too, because he mentioned he was afraid of public speaking, and now he's out talking to Google and all these workplaces. Well, that brings me to part 2. In part 2, he talks about how to grow, find your purpose, set up routines that bring you peace in your day, train your mind, and detach from your ego. And gosh, the purpose chapter could be a book on its own. And I thought it would be great for, college graduates or high school graduates or people who are like, where do I go from here? And it's probably the process that he took when he got out of being a monk, and then figured out, what am I going to do with my life? I'm living with my parents. I'm in debt.
And he has no self-esteem.
Yeah.
And that language that he uses about the ego is, so, of course, me, I'm going, now let's see, I used to know something about Freud. What did Freud say about the ego? And what's the id? And, what's a superego? Is he using this terminology appropriately or not? And I had to pull myself back from that because the point he's making in this chapter is about letting go of your ego.
Right.
And so you wanted to say something else about that, I think.
Well, in that you have to find your dharma. He talks about dharma. I didn't really know what dharma was until this book, but he's got a good definition of it, that your passion plus your expertise plus usefulness is your dharma. And so he says, if you find that and live in your dharma, it's a certain route to fulfillment.
I love that. Love it, love it, love it. That was one of my favorite things in the whole book, was finding that little equation.
Yeah, and I think that's why it would be great for people who maybe are like, what am I doing with my life? Well, he spells it out, right? Like, he's got this whole formula for, okay, what are you passionate about? Is it real? He has you really think through, is it useful? Is it something the world can catch on to? And, does it feel right to you? Is it what you're naturally good at? Yeah,
but that check of, did it make a difference to somebody else, is
important.
A really helpful checkpoint, because a lot of us like to do things. It's very self-satisfying, but it really doesn't matter to anybody else. So maybe that's not where we are called, this little thing that we've got tapped with, because we're all different.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we've got to throw our ideas out there to see if the world really needs it. And he talks about that later. He's got another chapter about service, and, that's certainly a big part of his message. Well, then he talks us through a routine and then mastering the mind. Each of these really can be a chapter of their own. And the routine one, what stood out to me was how he wants you to really design your day, to wake up early, to make sure you start without looking at your phone, which as a millennial, it's hard to do.
I got to back this up because he says wake up early, and I'm going, I'm a biologist, and we've got this chronotype. Some of us are morning larks, and some of us are night owls. And so here's this issue. He's telling me I got to get up at 4:30, and I'm not wanting to do that because I just went to bed at 3:30, and, this is not going to be good. But actually, doesn't he say, he didn't say what time to get up. He says get up early for you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was liberating for the night owls that are out there, because this thing of forcing everybody to a morning routine is, in my opinion, one of the reasons we have a problem in modern society. The work industrial age put everybody on this time clock that started at 6 o'clock in the morning and it lasts till 7 at night, and you're exhausted. And if you're a night owl, you're going to have more health risk doing that than anybody else. So I liked what he said here about early, but early just means early for you.
Exactly. And his whole point is, sometimes we wake up to an alarm that jolts us out of bed, we check our phone, we rush to eat breakfast or even skip breakfast, and then we're off to work without really setting an intention for our day. So he really just wants us to get up a little bit early so that we have time for that stillness and reflection. And he talks about when he was a monk, he would wake up at 4:30 to the sound of the birds, and the sun was rising. And I think he's just trying to help us find a way to incorporate that peace in the morning.
And those natural rhythms.
Yeah.
Reconnecting to nature. And just this artificial stuff that we've created for ourselves has not been so healthy.
Yeah, I'm really thankful in the pandemic and the work from home realm that we're in is that I can sleep in a little more. Because in the winter, I want to sleep longer because it's darker longer. And I actually get to do that. But in the real world, when we're rushing out the door.
Or the artificial world.
Yes, thank you. The artificial world that we've created.
Because the seasonal thing is something that's very true, is that this wintertime is the restorative time. Nature is recovering from the productive seasons of spring and summer. Yeah. And it's true for us probably as well. But we have ignored it.
Yeah. So if we can control that and just get up early to us with enough time to just set a little bit of intention, have a little peaceful moment before.
Yeah, don't just start with a rush.
Don't just start with chaos. That's what he says. And then he goes into how to have a monk mind. And did you have any reactions to the monk mind chapter that come to your mind right now?
No, but I like the idea of it. And I do think that in his book, he does give us some tools.
Yeah. Well, one of the tools I liked is the analogy that our mind is a chariot. So we have the horses, which are our senses, and we're driving the chariot. But if we're not regularly reflecting and being intentional, we're basically asleep at the wheel. And the horses are just driving us everywhere. Our senses are distracting us, or, we're impulsive. So I like analogies, so I found that really helpful to think about that, we have to be awake, we have to be directing and in control of our senses. Otherwise, we're just bouncing all over the place.
Yeah, and I'm reading another book, and I guess I can mention that I read another book too. It's on another topic. It's about the Focus Project, and the fellow is talking about when you say yes to everything, you really aren't doing yourself a service. And that's kind of the chaos thing of the senses. When your senses are firing and you're seeing things that are bright and shiny and new, and you turn away from whatever you were focused on, or you hear something, your senses are telling you, hey, look at this. And you do it. And you say, yes, I will look at that. Yes, I will look at it. You're really, the word no is important. So even though it's a negative thing, there's something about saying, I don't intend to let my horses run wild. That's a negative thought in a way,
right.
But it's a very good thought because you're saying, no, that will take my horses down a road that might not be a good place to go.
And much like that, he also says, reframe those negative thoughts to progress. So if you're having a negative thought or a distracted thought, you bring it back to the progress that you've made. Well, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm working on it.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you were saying about your son, I believe, that ways to, help him not compare himself to somebody else's great successes, but look at where he is in his progress.
Yes, exactly. And then that leads right into ego, which you brought up earlier, that Shetty tells us the difference between self-esteem and ego, and this has really helped me with my son. So self-esteem is able to filter what people say. It compares only to ourselves. You want to be yourself when you have self-esteem. You can learn from anyone. It's okay to be vulnerable, and you can respect yourself and others. Now, ego, on the other hand, is the comparison to others, the wanting to be better, wanting to be seen as better. And he really tells us that we've got to let that ego go and work on that self-esteem and the progress instead.
Yeah, it's not much fun to be around someone with an overinflated ego.
Oh, gosh, no. So he helps us work through our ego, too, by looking for opportunities to detach from it. So like receiving an insult or even receiving a compliment or accolade, right? How hard is it for especially women, I think, to accept a compliment just as it is without saying, oh, no. Or he says, if someone says, oh, I like your hair today, then your ego would say, what, didn't you like it yesterday? Says, oh, thank you. Thanks, you like my hair. And then, of course, he has a meditation to help you, bring it all back together. And I like this one, so I was going to share it. It's a visualization to capture joy, happiness, and purpose. So as you look at 5, it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look at 5 things that you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. I think this is great to, if you're getting caught up in ego, you're getting caught up in negativity, your horses are going off track. There's an easy way. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me bring this back to where I want to be.
Mm-hmm. The trick is remembering to do that.
Yes, exactly. And lastly, part 3 is about how you can relate to the world once you've kind of put on a new filter. You've filtered out what you don't want. You've figured out your purpose, your values. Now he really encourages you to go and have healthy relationships, to be of service to the world, and to be grateful. I think gratitude is my favorite of this. Do you have a gratitude practice at all? Have you ever done anything like that?
Yes, I have. And I found out about that from The Happiness Advantage. I'm trying to think of the author's name, Sean. Have you read The Happiness Advantage?
No.
But he talks about getting into touch with your things that have made you happy, that you're grateful for. And if you start your day, just as this author is suggesting, you will find your mind is prepared for the day in a different way. And the same thing at the end of the day. You can relax and fall asleep and start your sleep cycle. It does something chemically in your brain that allows relaxation to occur. But yeah, so the practice of gratitude in my passion planner, I have those opportunities for prompts on that. There was a time I had a jar, a mason jar, and every day I would write down something I was grateful for and throw it in there. My husband was sick at the time, and so we did it together, and it was a really wonderful thing. And then we opened the jar later, and when we needed the little uplifts and stuff, we could reflect on those things again. So that was kind of a fun little practice.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I've been working on writing it down in the evening, but also trying to start my day with it. And Jay points out that, and you can tell me if you agree, when we are focused on gratitude, like when we're thinking about that positive thought, it's impossible to be sad.
Absolutely. It picks me up. It really does. When this beautiful day we've got today with the sunshine, we're so lucky. Yesterday or the day before was a little gray. And it can help you if you just focus on the fact that you're alive and you have today to do something. And, it can be that simple. And that can happen in any situation, whether you're, in dire circumstances. I mean, I keep thinking about people that are like in the concentration camps. How do you possibly survive something like that? And yet people have, and they've talked about these simple little things they do, like the gratitude for the flea. You've heard that story. The little girl in the concentration camps and the fleas are biting her.
No.
Oh, well, she's grateful for the fleas, and everybody's thinking, well, why would you be grateful for that? Well, because the Gestapos don't like bugs, so they leave me alone.
Oh, wow.
So the fleas were protecting her, and she was grateful for the fleas. It's like, oh,
what a great lesson.
yeah.
To learn.
Well, I hope I don't have to learn that one.
Well,
but to be able to have the mindset in that kind of situation to find something to be grateful for.
Yeah,
that's huge.
If they could find something grateful.
And she survived. The girl survived.
Yeah. Yeah. Gratitude is amazing. That is the sum of Jay Shetty's Think Like a Monk. You've got...
But he gave us some really good things at the end of the book.
Oh.
Remember, he gave us the mantras and the vibrations and the meditations that we could do, because I think what he was telling us is you got to practice this stuff. You can't just all of a sudden remember to be grateful every day. You have to be intentional. And there are things that we can practice for a little while that will become a habit. And then our days are different. So I loved his appendix. I thought that was the best part of well, not the best part of the book, but really a helpful part of the book.
Because it really
It explained, here's what you do. Here's a
Yes.
little protocol thing that you can do, and say these words and do it in this environment and still yourself. And this will help still you.
Yes.
And if you've never done it, he kind of tells you how to do it, which I thought was really nice.
It is nice, and it's something I still have to work on. I have to,
You mean you're not perfect? Oh, boy.
I'm not perfect, and I haven't built meditation in. I've built reflection in, but I've struggled for a while to build meditation in. And he says, yeah, people will tell you 5 minutes of meditation is better than nothing, but he really recommends 30 minutes because he doesn't think you can get very far with 5 minutes. But I haven't moved beyond the 5 minutes a day.
Well, I'll tell you something that we're doing in my business world.
Okay.
I have a team, and so I have some colleagues that are in similar work, and we have a practitioner that leads us in guided meditation, which he didn't really speak about guided meditation. But we have a regular practice of that we're hoping will become part of our regular routines. But we have a coach. We have somebody that can help us learn how to do that. I've been a member of another meditative group, and it seems like I have flirted with this over the years. I've done it for a while, and then life overwhelms me, and I let go of it. And I don't know what that's about, but I think I'm revisiting this again. And I wonder if any of our listeners have flirted with it or have adopted it. It'll be fun to find out.
Yeah, let us know. I've played around with different like introductory services, like Headspace is a great service to get introduced to meditation, to understand it. It's got a lot of guided meditations, and it has some free versions and then the upgrade. And then another that I happened upon is called 10% Happier. And the guy that runs it, he's really down to earth. And he's like, look, I'm the last person that I would ever say would be into meditation. But it's changed my life. I used to have panic attacks. And he just makes it really relatable and easy to get into. So those are two things. Let me know if you've tried those and what you thought of them. But I found him helpful because I have flirted with it a little bit too off and on. And that's the way I've gotten into it. All right. Well, thank you for reminding me of the ending because, yes, it's such a great tool. So check that out. And we want to hear from you. Have you read the book? Do you want to read the book? And if you read the book, what'd you like about it? What are you taking away from it? Continue this discussion with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well. You can do that by emailing us. I'm Kristen at wellbalancednutrition.com. And yours again?
E.L. Russell at 360health4u.com.
Or find us on Facebook. Well, thanks so much for listening today, and a special thanks to Well Balanced Nutrition and 360 Health for sponsoring. Join us again next time.
views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.